there, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Noelle Green and I am a junior UND dietetics student. And today I'm going to teach you guys how to make chickpea gyros. Now this is a really quick recipe. It takes probably about 15 minutes in all to make, and it's a really great recipe because the fact that it's quick. It is a meatless recipe, and I don't always eat meatless, but I do try to eat a couple meatless meals a week because that's just beneficial for your health. And so that's why I'm excited to share this one with you guys. Also, just being a college student, I love when there's an easy and quick recipe, and this one is pretty cheap as well. It's probably something pretty different from what you've ever made, as it's using chickpeas. So come with me. So before we get started cooking, make sure you wash your hands. Now you probably have heard a lot about hand washing recently with all that's going on, but this is a really important step for food safety. So wash your hands for about 20 seconds, making sure to get underneath your nails, in between your fingers, on the tops of your hands, and even making sure you get your thumbs, and also your wrists can be something that people forget oftentimes. All right, so then once you're done washing your hands, feel free to dry them and we'll get started with the recipe. All right, so to start, you're gonna heat up 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a pan. Now I already have my olive oil measured out. And so what's great about olive oil, that it is a source of omega-6 fatty acids, and that's an essential fatty acid that you must get from your diet. And it does also promote good cholesterol in your body. So while the olive oil is heating up, we're gonna open up our can of chickpeas, also called garbanzo beans. And now these are a good source of protein, fiber, which is good for aiding in digestion, and also vitamins and minerals like folate and phosphorus. So one thing to know about canned goods, they're a great way and a cheap way to get vegetables. For us college students, I know I use canned goods all the time. One thing you might want to remember is to rinse off the top before you open up the can, just because that just makes sure there's no dust left on it. All right, and so then also a good thing to know about canned goods is that they can be high in sodium because of preservation reasons. So always look for ones that say low salt, low sodium, no salt added, things like that. But of course, if that's not an option or you can't find that in the store, no worries. Rinsing a can of canned vegetables or whatever it would be can remove about 40% of the sodium in that. So always be sure to rinse your canned goods. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Just take your colander and your can of garbanzo beans and go to the sink. All right, and then once it's all rinsed, grab your clean kitchen towel and you're gonna dry them off on this towel. So just empty it out. And you're just drying them. This is so that when we cook them, they'll get nice and crispy. Okay, so once your chickpeas are all dry and your olive oil has been heated up, we're just gonna add the chickpeas to the olive oil pan. So just be careful about the olive oil splashing everywhere because it is heated up already, so. Okay, so now we have our chickpeas in the pan. You're gonna take your wooden spoon or any utensil you have to stir them up a little bit and just lightly season it with salt and pepper right now. So there's the pepper, now the salt, okay, plenty. And so one thing you'll want to watch out for when you're cooking the chickpeas is burning. We don't want burnt chickpeas, so you will be cooking them for about 8 minutes, but just make sure you watch out for them burning. All right, so I have an 8-minute timer going for these chickpeas, and while we have them cook, we're wanting to make sure to stir. You don't have to stir constantly, but we just don't want any burnt chickpeas on our chickpea gyros, okay? And so while we're doing that, you could go ahead now and prepare your dry ingredients. And so that's gonna be the seasonings. We already put some salt and pepper in here, but it's gonna be oregano, paprika, and garlic powder, and then cumin as well. So just prepare those ingredients. It's gonna be a 4th paprika and a 4th garlic powder, a 4th teaspoon, sorry, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of oregano and a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin. And then once these are done, after the 8 minutes, we'll just add those in there and cook them for a couple more minutes. This is pretty simple, really. This is all the cooking that's gonna be done. And then the rest is just preparing the garnishes, so that's gonna be the toppings for your gyros as well. And then one thing I should mention is just make sure you're on medium-high heat. We don't have it on high heat. So we're burning them, but maybe not low heat. We do want them to get a little bit crispy. That's why we're drying them. It's a pretty important step. So this is going to be a really nutrient-packed meal with the chickpeas, especially providing protein and fiber and vitamins and minerals as well. And then we're also going to have a Greek yogurt sauce. Yeah, so just continuing to cook until the chickpeas are done. I'll show you what it looks like. So just while I have you here for a minute, just a quick tip about grocery shopping and how to make it more affordable. I don't know if you know, but there are oftentimes at grocery stores weekly ads which have the weekly deals. So I always am sure to check that out at Hugo's, for example. Before I go grocery shopping, I do usually make a list. That's one tip about grocery shopping. Make a list so you don't go in there just buying whatever looks good or spending, way too long in the grocery store. You don't need that either. So those are just some tips. And then as well, we're so lucky with online shopping. You can check out the prices from different stores. You'll be surprised what you find, that there are some stores in which certain items are cheaper and some stores in which other ones are cheaper that are different from those other stores. So it really is beneficial to do a little price check before you go to the grocery store. So I've even turned my heat up a little bit here just because they're not crisping up as fast as I had hoped they would. So just be sure to watch for how they're cooking really and adjust accordingly also to your preferences. So once this time is up, I have my seasonings all measured out, and then I'll just add them to the chickpeas. I was gonna say, truthfully, I think that cooking can be daunting, but it doesn't have to be with simple recipes like this. And it doesn't have to be time consuming either. All right, so now you're gonna add the seasonings. And then just stir it well so that the chickpeas are coated evenly. And you're gonna cook this for another maybe minute or two, just until they are crisp as you prefer them to be. Yeah, just until they're crisp. All right, so here we have the chickpeas with the seasoning. And we're just cooking them for about a minute or so more until they are crisp for the gyros. I'm just gonna let them sit for a little bit more. All right, so my chickpeas are just about done. I think I'm just gonna let them crisp a little bit more even. And then once they're done, we're just gonna prep the vegetables. So that's gonna be the cucumber and lettuce, and then also the Greek yogurt sauce that I was talking about earlier. All right, so next you're gonna wanna grab your cutting board and any knife that works for you cutting vegetables. I'm just doing a small knife. And then also grab a damp washcloth. The reason you'll need this is to put underneath your cutting board. This is just for safety, because if you don't have something like this under, it will be more prone to slipping. Yeah, you can't really see it that well, but it will be, and then this will be less prone to slipping, if you can see. So I've got my knife, got my cutting board, and now we have our vegetables. So first let's start with the cucumbers. So let's just wash this off, rinse it off. Give it a little shake. All right, so coming back to the cutting board, we're just gonna cut off the two ends and toss them in the garbage. All right, so when you are, I'm gonna move this Greek yogurt. Okay, so when you are cutting something on a cutting board, when you're cutting anything, you want to make sure that you have your fingers, curled like so, so your knuckles are against, if you can see, the knife. So if anything slips, it just slips straight down so you don't cut one of your fingers off. All right, so you just want to do kind of thin slices because this is going on your gyro. And don't worry about being perfect. I'm certainly not perfect at cutting vegetables by any means. You can probably tell. This is just for you, so it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, if you're serving somebody, maybe you want to make it look a little nicer, but for me, this is just right. Oops, see, there were a couple bigger pieces, a couple smaller ones. You definitely won't need a whole cucumber, but I'm just gonna go cut up my whole cucumber just because then it will be ready for whatever I decide to use it in next. Or if I want extras later. Alrighty, so we're almost done with the cucumber. All right, so we have the cucumber done. I'm gonna grab a dish to put this in. One thing that's great about cucumbers, besides the fact that they have vitamins in them, is also that they are pretty high in water content. So that means while you're also getting your vitamins in, you're also hydrating. So now we're gonna do the lettuce, and in the recipe it did say a bag of lettuce, but I'm just gonna use this head of lettuce because that is what we had in our fridge, and so just trying to save this trip to the grocery store. So I'm just gonna rinse this off. All right, and then bring it back to the cutting board. And so if you bought shredded lettuce, you would not have to do this, but I don't have shredded lettuce, so I am just cutting it up. And pretty simple, just similarly to the cucumber, and you can cut it up in as small of pieces as you want, just similar to shredded lettuce. Perfect, I think that's great. All right, I'm gonna get a dish for this. All right, so we have our toppings, perfect. But we don't have the Greek yogurt sauce. So now we've finished preparing the vegetables. We just have the Greek yogurt left. I'm gonna grab a spoon. I realized I don't have one. All right, so all you need for this is Greek yogurt and lemon. And now I already have half a lemon cut up, so I'm gonna use that for the lemon juice. But one thing to know about citrus fruits like lemon, if you're juicing them, you wanna make sure they're at room temperature when you do, because that's gonna yield the most juice out of them, okay? So one way to do that, I'll just show you. If it's, because this is pretty cold, I would have you feel it, but you can't. But trust me when I say this is pretty chilly. It's definitely not room temperature. So one thing to do is you're just gonna put pressure and roll it until it warms up. And you just keep doing that, essentially just like that until it's room temperature. I'm not gonna do it all the way just because I already have a lemon cut up, so I don't really need to, but just to show you, one tip when you're juicing, it will yield more juice than the cold lemon. And honestly, I had this cut up already, so if I were to do that to this, it would get juice everywhere, and I don't want to do that, so I'm a little bit sad because this is still chili, but it's gonna work. I'm just gonna take my spoon and get some of the big seeds that I see out of there. All right, and then you probably know what to do with lemon. You're just gonna put some lemon juice into the Greek yogurt. This is just gonna make a nice flavor, and it probably would be about a tablespoon. Honestly, I didn't measure it out. You can eyeball it kind of. It all depends on how much Greek yogurt you're using for a, one recipe. Whoopsie daisies. Made a little bit of a mess. But for one recipe, just about one mini thing of Greek yogurt is probably all that you would need. That might even be more than enough, more than you would need, truthfully, for this recipe, because this recipe yields 4 servings. So there's one thing to note. All right, and then you'll just stir it up, of course, like that, and then that Greek yogurt is all set. I'm just gonna wipe off my mess. Okay, so you have everything prepared. Now you just need to grab your bread. So in the recipe, it calls for whole wheat pita bread, but we already had these whole wheat flatbreads at home, so that's what I'm using today. And if you can't find whole wheat pita bread and you still want to use pita bread, for sure, just use pita bread. Okay, and then one tip from Choose My Plate. If you guys know My Plate, you've probably seen it plastered all over everywhere. Anywhere that promotes health and nutrition is the USDA's Guide to a Healthy Plate, and it has the grains, vegetables, protein, dairy, and fruit on it. And so one tip is to make half your grains whole grains, and so that's why I'm using whole grains. And one tip for shopping, okay? So when you're shopping, it may say, 9 grain, whatever it is, it would probably look brown. If it looks brown, you think, oh yeah, that's perfect, that's whole wheat, but not actually the case. Make sure that it says whole wheat flour in the ingredient list listed as the first ingredient, and that's how you know for sure that it is whole wheat flour, that it is a whole wheat product. Okay, so one more thing about this recipe, one more thing with this recipe is you probably want to heat up your bread. So your flatbread, your pita bread, you probably want it a little bit crispier or warm at least. So I'm just gonna remove the chickpeas, put them into this little bowl. I'm trying to do it without spilling, honestly. There we go, there we go. These look great, honestly. Okay, so the reason I want to use the same pan is because I do want those seasonings, so I'm just going to turn it on super low. Okay. And I'm just going to take one of my flatbreads, it's just a folded over flatbread, and put it in the pan so that it can heat up and hopefully get a little bit of those seasonings that are left on the pan in there. Okay, so you're pretty much done. Now you just have to put it together. So I did see that we had dill in our spice drawer. So I'm gonna put some dill in here. It's not in the recipe, so it's definitely not something you need for this recipe, but it will add some flavor to that Greek yogurt sauce. It's not something I would typically have in my cupboard at my apartment in Grand Forks, so I don't think it would be something that most people would have, but by all means, if you have it, or if you want to go purchase it because you like to feel more than welcome. Okay, so you have all your ingredients. So the way I like to do it is just to put some of that Greek yogurt sauce onto one side of the flatbread, and if you're using pita bread, just lather it on there, honestly. And then some chickpeas. Yeah, that looks great. And then on the other side is where I'm gonna put my cucumbers. I'm gonna grab some thin slices of cucumbers, but they're mostly looking good. I'm just gonna do that. And then the lettuce on the chickpea side. Oh my gosh. A little information about this recipe as a whole. There are 4 servings in this recipe. So if you were to buy everything from start to finish, so if you were to buy the olive oil, all the seasonings, if you didn't have any of the ingredients at all in your house, the cost would be about $19.77, depending, of course, what brands you're buying of things. But with it calculated out for just what's being used in this recipe, the cost is about $8.50, and then the actual cost per serving for this recipe is $2.12 per serving. So that's pretty good. And then also it makes 4 servings, so you should be able to have 4 meals out of this. Of course, maybe add some sides, some fruit for a side or something would be really good. And then a couple things about the nutrition facts for this recipe. It's going to be about 460 calories per serving, and then also about 20 grams of protein per serving because of that Greek yogurt, those chickpeas. And then it's also gonna have about 65 grams of carbohydrates, and then 11.4 grams of sugar, none of them being added sugars, of course. So I hope that helps you out a little bit. Okay, so now everything is completed, and so you're just gonna, you've plated it, and that's really all that there is to the recipe, about 15 minutes maximum. And it's a really great recipe, not only because it's fast, not only because it's healthy and cheap, but also if you wanted to, you could just take the recipe, which the base of the recipe, excuse me, which is the chickpeas, right? And so just put them in the pan with the seasonings, and then you can use them in so many other dishes. They could be used as a side for another meal that you want to make. They could be used in a Greek salad, would be really good, or any type of salad really. They could be used even in a pasta or something like that. But even I know that I really like to eat them as a snack. If I have just a little bit left over where it's not gonna be enough to make another chickpea gyro, then I'm just gonna put them in a little container for later and then eat them as a snack, maybe while I'm doing some schoolwork, or take them with me to class. Something really simple, really good. And well, that's all that we have for you. I really hope that you got a new recipe for your recipe book, something really easy, cheap, and healthy. And I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for cooking with me. Once again, here's a written out list of ingredients if you want to come back to it.